Hello, folks. I'm Leecamp, your friendly anti-Zionist Jew. And I'm changing the name of the show to Genocide Watch as we watch Israel continue to perpetrate this genocide against Gaza, against Palestinians. I have a lot of news, a lot of important stuff for you. We're going to go through the dumbest things people say about Gaza right now, the dumbest things people believe about Gaza right now. But I'm going to start with a 1-minute clip from the State Department. This is journalist Sam Husseini, who makes the State Department representative look like a damn moron, which is really easy to do, considering how much propaganda they have to push and how much crap they have to push and how many lies they have to tell. It is not that difficult, actually, to make them look this dumb, but very few journalists are willing to do it. Very few journalists are willing to risk their movement up the ladder, risk their seat in the State Department press room. So let's go ahead and do this first, and then we'll get to the dumbest things people believe about Gaza coming up in a second. Please take a second, by the way, to hit thumbs up and hit subscribe or follow and hit the bell icon and all that good stuff. And please leave a comment, even if you got nothings to say, because it helps. Somehow it helps. Okay, so this starts with, for those of you listening on the podcast, which is called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify, this begins with Sam Husseini, and this is at the State Department.
Greg Mokhiber, who just resigned as director of the New York office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, noted that intent, usually the hardest part of genocide to prove, isn't in this case. He wrote in his resignation letter, quote, "Explicit statements of intent by leaders in the Israeli government and military leave no room for doubt or debate." You claim that you want Israel to make the distinction, but you don't seem to be making the distinction. If I might, I didn't interrupt you. The Center for Constitutional Rights just put out a statement. Legal organizations put members of Congress on notice for complicity on genocide. Quote, "Please take note," this is a letter that they sent to members of Congress, Center for Constitutional Rights. "Please take notice that should you vote in favor of that package, the Biden package for Israel, you risk facing criminal and civil liabilities for aiding and abetting genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity under international law, and may face investigation and prosecution." Do members of the State Department face similar possibility?
Again, Sam, as I said, we have the U.S. government has a rigorous process in place for evaluating whether something constitutes genocide, and we have not made that assessment.
But you continue to pretend that the bombing of hospital after hospital, bakery after bakery, university after university, and somehow you keep pretending that, oh, they're just after military people.
Yeah, there is no excuse for why the U.S. is not calling this a genocide. If you look at just about any definition you can find, and as Sam Husseini points out, many legal scholars have said this is an attempted genocide. They're working towards genocide. They're trying to kill as many people in Gaza as possible so as to force all of them to try and flee south, although many of them cannot get out south into Egypt. But it is a full-on murderous occupation, killing over 400, this is according to UNICEF, over 400 children a day. A day. I feel like I need to keep saying it so that it echoes in all of our heads. Over 400 children a day Israel is murdering right now. And it fits every definition of genocide. And the U.S. is trying to, juke and jive around the definition to say, oh no, it's not, it's military targets. Well, they're really nailing those targets. There was a bad guy underneath the hospital. That's what it was. There was a bad dude sitting underneath that hospital. So we went through the hospital with the bomb to get to the bad dude. It's just garbage. And compare this to how the U.S. will talk about China perpetrating a genocide against Uyghurs. Whereas even this is the kind of bullshit propaganda version of what's going on in Xinjiang province, is like that the Uyghurs are being restrained, put inside prison camps, forced labor, stuff like that. None of that is genocide, but still the U.S. is willing to call it genocide. And even all of those things I just listed are not true, and have been proven false many times, and the sources are ridiculous. But in that case, you have the U.S. willing to call it genocide being perpetrated by China. Then you have Israel literally killing thousands. We are well over 10,000, almost, I think, to 11,000 people, Gazans killed just in a month. That's more innocent people killed than innocent Ukrainians killed in the entire year and a half of that proxy war that the U.S. helped create. So it's just hilarious to see them try and dodge this definition of genocide. Okay, I want to get to, and actually some of the things I just mentioned will be on the list, but let's get to the dumbest things that people say or believe about Gaza. And I got the idea for this from the wonderful Caitlin Johnstone. I'm going to start out using some of hers listed, and then I'm going to add several of my own. Use hers as a jumping off point, but she has a great article about it. The 10 dumbest things we're being asked to believe about Israel's war on Gaza. And I'm not going to go through all of hers. I'm just going to use a few of them. But then I am also going to add several of my own in terms of what we're seeing here and what people are saying. That Israel, so I'll start off with the one she has there. Number one, that Israel has no idea what Hamas was up to prior to October 7th, which Israel has bragged for years about being one of the top surveillance nations in the world. They outsource their surveillance tech to other countries. I mean, not outsource, they sell it, they export it. They make a lot of money from selling their surveillance tech. And they have claimed that they know every movement, they know everybody, they know everything. Now, that is an apartheid state, and it's horrific in and of itself. So even before October 7th, it was horrific. But Caitlin Johnstone makes the point, and I've made this point in earlier live streams, they knew where everything was and everything that was happening pre-October 7th. But then they had no idea that was going to happen on October 7th. No idea that Hamas was going to break out of their prison they'd created for 2.3 million people, break out of it, go take hostages, fight the IDF with guns. And they had no idea any of that was going to happen. But now, after October 7th, Israel again knows where every Hamas person is, and they know they're exactly where they're hiding in refugee camps, and they know exactly where they're hiding inside hospitals or under hospitals, and they know exactly where they're hiding inside trucks that are delivering water, and they know exactly where they're hiding inside ambulances that are trying to take the sick and ill to the hospital or away from the hospital because the hospital has been threatened with being bombed, and they then bomb that ambulance convoy. And Israel knows where all the Hamas fighters are, and every time they hit an ambulance or a hospital or a school or a unit or a UN office, the UN has had 60 of their workers murdered by Israel so far. Whenever any of that happens, Israel knows exactly where the Hamas fighters are, and they're doing it because they need to go after those Hamas fighters. That's what we're supposed to believe now. They had no idea what was going to happen on October 7th, but now they know where they all are. Number two, that Hamas is using human shields. This idea of human shields, I covered it in an earlier live stream with the help of Abby Martin. It's just a racist, ridiculous propaganda term, which basically allows for genocide if you believe it. If you believe that you can blow up a hospital because Hamas has an office underneath it, then you have used this human shields ridiculousness. And that's if they had an office underneath the hospital, which Israel says that, who knows if it's true or not. But even if they did, morally and in international law and in the law under the Geneva Convention, you cannot just blow up the hospital because you don't like the 12 guys underneath it. That's not how any sane human functions. That's not how we wouldn't be okay with it. If someone took a hostage in the United States, let's say this maniac guy, he abuses his spouse. She's going to leave him. He takes her hostage in her office building. And we then bomb the entire office building and kill all the workers. Could we go, well, it was human shields. Yeah, it was. What are you going to do? You got to bomb the office building. No, it's insanity. That's an insane person is what that is. So this human shields garbage. And on top of that, there's a bunch more reasons that the human shields is so crazy, that idea is so insane. For one thing, Hamas is the government of Gaza, whether you like it or not. So any government building counts as Hamas, and therefore Israel can just bomb everywhere in Gaza because it's near a Hamas building. Yeah, well, that's the garbage disposal building for Hamas because that's the government. So just blow it all up, blow it up for a mile, doesn't matter. But you can't do that in Israel, right? If anyone did that in Israel, that would be a war crime. That would be a crime against humanity. Think about how many government offices there are throughout Israel. Israel has important government offices in regular residential neighborhoods. Could you just blow up the whole neighborhood and be like, human shields? No, I don't think so. But we're expected to believe that when it comes to Hamas and Gaza. Number 3, that it would be perfectly fine to murder children by the thousands, even if they were being used as human shields. That one is pretty self-explanatory. Okay, let's say human shields was a real thing, and a guy, a Hamas fighter, ran into a schoolhouse so he could hide from the bombs. And then it's okay to bomb the schoolhouse? No. Again, insanity. But we're expected to believe that. And this is spouted regularly by people who claim to be intelligent. Number 4, the satellite images of entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble in Gaza have been caused by, quote, precision strikes directed solely at Hamas and have been carried out with the greatest of care for human life. So here's the thing is the IDF and the Israeli government and the U.S. doing the bidding of the Israeli government want us to believe 2 things at the same time. One, that it's okay to bomb all these civilians, to kill all these civilians, but also that Israel's not meaning to. They're trying to hit the Hamas fighters with precision missiles, and it just so happens they took out a whole hospital. And then on top of that, they want us to believe that, well, not want us to believe. Some of them have made statements about their goal is to kill as many as possible. The opposite of precision strikes. A few government officials have outwardly said, some of it in leaked audio or video, some of it in public statements. One IDF soldier said, we don't care about accuracy. We just care about the number we're killing. Another government official has posted that it's time to kill all Gazans. These are higher up government officials. So they're admitting their war crimes. Another one, which I played the clip on this live stream a few days ago, said to Mark Lamont Hill that if Hamas civilians want to stop being bombed, then they need to deliver the hostages. And until then, it's not going to stop. But that's illegal under international law. It's called collective punishment. You're killing everybody because you're upset that Hamas fighters took hostages. And of course, your average Gazan, your average civilian in Gaza doesn't have any control over whether Hamas releases the hostages. Actually, I'll get to that more in a moment. Number 5, that this bombing campaign has anything to do with freeing Israeli hostages. I've covered this a lot on this live stream. As though the bombing campaign itself has not killed dozens of hostages, and as though anyone believes Israel will stop bombing Gaza if the hostages are returned. Israel doesn't care about the hostages. They are not trying to get the hostages. They may be trying to keep up the show as if they're trying to get the hostages, but really they're trying to kill as many as possible. They're also trying to achieve long-term aims of clearing all Palestinians out of Gaza, long-term aims that allow them to have that land, have that passage to the sea, everything else. So they don't care about the hostages, and they haven't from day one. And in fact, again, as I've covered on this live stream, the IDF did a lot of the killing on October 7th. It was not only IDF, but basically Hamas took hostages, and IDF eventually came in and blew up whole buildings, killing the hostages, killing Hamas, and killing anybody nearby. And that's called the Hannibal Directive. Israel's well known to behave this way. When a enemy takes a hostage, they just kill everyone around them, including the hostage. That's their process, because they're psychopaths. Number 6, that the only reason anyone could possibly oppose the detonation of thousands of bombs on an open-air prison full of children would be if they had very strong and hateful opinions toward members of the religion of Judaism. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I am Jewish, grew up Jewish. I'm atheist by choice, but you keep being Jewish culturally, even if you choose not to be highly religious, or you choose to be secular, which most Israeli Jews, by the way, are secular. There's not all that much, Orthodox. Now, the Orthodox do have tons of kids, so there's an increasing Orthodox population in Israel, but there are a lot of secular Jews in Israel. And Zionism is not Judaism. In fact, there are more Zionists in the world. There's more Zionists in America than there are Jews in the world. There are more Christian Zionists than Jews in the world, because evangelical Christians, and that's just evangelical Christians strongly believe that all the Jews need to be in Israel in order for the end times to come, in order for all the Jews to burn in hell. So, which you'd think is a little ironic, hey, we support you all going over there to Israel so you can burn in hell, have fun, bring a cup of water with you. It is amazing. And Israel takes all the support. They take all the donations. They love it. Sure, support us as you try and send us to hell. But on top of evangelicals, there's also, your average neoliberal in America is, many of them or most of them are Zionists. They believe that Israel should be a theocratic Jewish state. Even if they believe in a two-state solution, they still believe that Israel should be a Zionist state. So the idea that every Jew is Zionist or every Zionist is Jewish is just idiocy, dumb, ignorant, all those things. But again, the real reason that Israel is so powerful and is still there is because of its ties to the U.S. empire. It is a military base in the middle of the Middle East for the U.S. empire. Number 7, that Hamas attacked Israel entirely out of the blue and completely provoked solely because they are evil and hate Jews, which of course is dumb. It's not because they're evil, and it's not because they hate Jews. They hate the situation they've been put in. They hate that they live in an open-air prison, literally a prison. They literally cannot escape. Most of them, they literally have their water amounts decided for them, their food amounts. I mean, it's funny because the United States, we're told we all love freedom, right? We all stand up, freedom, and we want freedom, and we want freedom for other countries, except for Palestinians. We don't care for them to have any freedom. That's not on the list, really. And there's an extensive history. Again, our mainstream media specializes in trying to get Americans and get people around the world to forget history, to forget how we got here. But there is a long history of Israel persecuting Palestinians in so many different ways, stealing their land, controlling their water, stealing their resources, destroying their olive groves. Just so many ways that they've been persecuted over the years, not to mention murdering them. There's that too. Taking, people talk about the hostages that Hamas has taken, which is wrong. I don't think there should be hostages. But let's remember that Israel had 5,000 hostages before October 7th and has taken 5,000 more since October 7th. And I'll take a moment here to point out a hostage they have just added to their ranks. Israel has. Of the 5,000, more than 5,000 that they've stolen off the streets since October 7th, the Israeli troops have arrested Palestinian activist Ahed Tamimi in the West Bank. Many of you probably remember her from 2017. It went very very viral when she was 16 years old. She was on her own land, meaning in front of her house, in front of her dwelling with her parents and family members. And Israeli troops will just come into those areas sometimes and harass people. And so Israeli troops were in front of her house on their property, and she at 16 slapped one of them. And the video went viral, seen by hundreds of millions around the world. And she was ultimately arrested and held by Israelis for I think several weeks. I can't remember the exact amount of time, but she is now 22, is it? Or 20? 22 maybe. But she continues to be a strong activist and representative for the Palestinian people. And, some people have said, oh, the reason that she is able to get Americans and others to actually care about the Palestinian cause is because she looks so white. And make of that what you will, that Americans seem to care a lot more about a white-looking Palestinian than a non-white-looking one. But, yeah, she's 22 now. But yeah, Israeli troops marched in, arrested her in her house. They claim she had posted something on social media, which I think you and I all agree should be highly illegal to post something on social media. But they're also claiming that she never did that, and it's a fake or a fake account. But again, this is a hostage. They've taken another hostage. Ahed Tamimi, famed Palestinian activist. Yeah, it's just horrific what's going on. All right, so to go back to the list of the dumbest things people say or believe about Gaza, about what's going on right now, about the massacre, about the genocide. Here's number 8 and these first 8 were from Caitlin Johnstone. Read her article if you get a chance. Number 8, that Washington is powerless to stop this genocide, that it is directly funding and supplying. And I covered this a bunch yesterday on the live stream where I played the clip of Obama literally saying, I wonder, is there more I could have done? Yeah, anything. Anything is what you could have freaking done. Anything. You could cut off funding. You could cut off weapons. You could give, if he just gave a stupid speech for 10 minutes every day detailing the persecution of Palestinians, that would have changed the world. But of course he didn't. He did nothing. That's not what U.S. presidents do. And you don't get to that position if you are even hinting at doing anything like that. You aren't in that chair. So, and of course, Donald Trump's the same. But Donald Trump, Biden, all of them. Of course, Washington's not powerless. And I also brought to you, last Friday, how the U.S. basically has boots on the ground there. The U.S. is helping Israel perpetrate a genocide right now. They are flying drones. The Pentagon has admitted they're flying drones over Gaza and giving the intelligence to the Israelis. So they're part of the genocide actively. Not just sending weapons, but actively. But then on top of that, special forces are said to be in Israel, supposedly to help them with their tunnel battles that they're getting ready to do. Who knows whether they're actually getting ready to do anything in the tunnels or they just are going to keep bombing the ever-living hell out of Gaza. But either way, the U.S. is actively taking a role in this genocide. All right, so here are some I've added to the list of dumbest things that people are saying about Gaza or believing about Gaza. Number 9, that the people of Gaza should just give back the hostages if they want this to be over. I mentioned this earlier. The people of Gaza, the vast majority of them, like 95%, have no say over hostages, are not Hamas fighters, are not in the tunnels or wherever where the hostages are being held. Furthermore, Israel has killed many of the hostages. But could you imagine for people to expect your average American to have control over what Donald Trump or Joe Biden does? Like instant control. Like, imagine if someone told you that to get Donald Trump or Joe Biden to do something, like just was like if someone was attacking your neighborhood and they were saying, we'll stop attacking if you just get Biden to end the proxy war in Ukraine. And then every time someone was like, dude, they're killing children. What are you doing? And they were like, look, we told them all they got to do is get Joe Biden to stop the proxy war and we'll stop killing the children. You wouldn't go, oh, fair point. That's a fair point. No, you'd have that guy locked up in some sort of padded room. But that's what people are saying. Well, then Gazans shouldn't. They should release the hostages. It's not up to them. And on top of that, we've already discussed how Israel is not going to stop bombing if when hostages are released. It doesn't matter. They didn't change it. Hamas has released, 4 hostages? And Israel didn't change anything. They didn't do anything. They didn't go, oh, okay, we'll stop. We'll go have a ceasefire for a day for every hostage that comes out. Number 10, which I don't know if this one even needs saying, dumbest things people say about Gaza and Hamas. Hamas beheaded babies. Hamas raped people. No, all of those have been completely debunked. This doesn't mean, again, that I endorse what Hamas has done. I don't endorse killing of innocent civilians, but as I've also covered, it seems like the vast majority of civilians that were killed on October 7th was done by the IDF. Number 11, Israel will stop the bombing once they have things under control. No, they won't. No, they won't. Their plan is to essentially clear Gaza, flatten it, clear it, make it unlivable, and if a few people survive, to live in tents in Egypt. They're going to go there. Go to Egypt. Hadn't even said they'll do that, but Israel's just saying, well, we'll just keep bombing till they do. Number 12, if Palestinians want things to be different, they should have tried other forms of protest. They did. They have for years and years. They have. The Great March of Return is probably the best known one, where you had thousands of Palestinians unarmed walking at the border because they live in a prison, trying to get back to their lands from their familial lands, their ancestral lands. And hundreds were just shot by IDF snipers. Children, medics, journalists, hundreds were killed. These are unarmed people walking at a fence. And that's just one example of all the types of protests that Palestinians have tried. They've tried boycott, divest, and sanction. They've tried raising the alarm online for years to get people to know about the persecution that goes on. They have tried. Number 12, if Palestinians want things to be different, I did that one. And my final one here, 13, Israel would never do what Hamas did on October 7th. They wouldn't take hostages. They wouldn't kill innocent people if they weren't pushed to it. Yes, they would. And they have endlessly. Even before October 7th, they were bombing Palestinians. Even before October 7th, like recently before October 7th, Israel had assassinated a well-known journalist, Palestinian journalist. Israel had bombed, like a year or 2 years ago, bombed Al Jazeera's, the building Al Jazeera was in. They had bombed hospitals a dozen times before October 7th. They've done all these things in the past. These are not new. And then the hostages thing, as I mentioned earlier, Israel had 5,000 Palestinian hostages before October 7th. They now have 5,000 more. They have over 10,000 people held in their jails for no reason, and they just arrested Ahad Tamimi. So I hope that helps. The list of dumbest things people believe about Gaza, and if you need a refresher on how to debate some of these things, if anyone's debating, maybe you can come back and look at this clip. But I do want to move on, and I'm going to move. I have some more on Israel, but I kind of want to go back and forth between other stuff in Israel so that it's not just all Israel's genocide, which I've been doing for about 4 straight weeks. Like I barely ever do a different story. I mean, It is so horrific, and I never thought I'd see a live streamed genocide in my life, like to this level, where the world, I mean, the world is against it, but the U.S. and Britain and some other insane, megalomaniacal, sociopathic countries continue to support the genocide. But so there's a reason that I kind of keep doing this topic, that this has become my topic. But real quick, please take a second to subscribe and hit follow and hit the bell icon next to it. Also, all of my links, I have podcasts, I have books available, I have this live stream 4 days a week. I have Rad Indie Media is a site where you can get a lot of great anti-corporate media. I have all that stuff. And rather than reel off 15 links, I now have a Linktree page, linktree.com/leecamp, has all that information there for you. So you can get it all there if you've forgotten where to find my podcast or things like that. If you've forgotten where to get my book or whatever. So check out all that. But let's see. Let's see. How about the UN? This is an important story. And again, we'll be coming back to Israel. More horrors going on in Israel soon. But how about the fact that the other day the UN blessed the invasion of Haiti? Let me get it up on the screen here. The UN blessed MSS, a first step toward a long military occupation of Haiti. So this is back on October 2nd, but I feel like it took a while for the coverage to catch up. The UN Security Council passed Resolution 2699, authorizing a non-UN multinational security support force to Haiti. Basically, the UN said it's okay to send military troops to invade Haiti with the U.S., playing puppeteer, as long as those forces are, other countries. They're not the U.S., and things like that. The resolution was drafted by the United States and Ecuador. This resolution represents the successful implementation of phase 1 of Washington's 10-year strategy for Haiti. A U.S.-led invasion and 10-year occupation of Haiti is now imminent. Phase 2 of the 10-year strategic plan for Haiti was implemented in the summer of 2023. Phase 2 seeks to build a network of at least 250 U.S.-funded civil society, quote-unquote, organizations to influence public policy and decision-making as Washington oversees the reconstruction of Haiti's state institutions and government. The consequences of Washington's 10-year strategic plan for Haiti would be comparable to the 1915 American invasion and occupation of Haiti. If Washington gets its way, Haiti will turn from its current status as a U.S. neo-colonial back into a virtual colony, as it was under U.S. Marine rule from 1915 to 1934. That's right. The Marines ruled over Haiti for 19 years, U.S. Marines. But this has gone almost unreported that we are headed towards back to a full-on occupation of Haiti. And there's a lot of there's a lot of I don't know about similarities, but connections you can see here between the Palestinian cause and Haitians, in that Haiti was occupied, started as a slave colony where the people were fully enslaved. It was the first ever slave rebellion to be successful and start their own society. The slaves rebelled, took over, had their own society, had their freedom, and ultimately, and France continued to try and to fight them, but also you had the United States trying to, economic war on them. Then the U.S. Marines went in and occupied them for 19 years. I'm skipping over a lot of steps. It's a long, convoluted history, but the empire and France and their empire have not really ever left their fingerprints off of, let go of their tentacles around Haiti. And Haiti, part of the reason that they have remained so poor is a combination of the economic war against them by the United States, but also they were found under international law to have to pay France back for the billions of dollars France lost because they lost their slaves. They had to pay France for their freedom to no longer be France's property. And they only completed the payments, I don't remember what it was, like a couple of decades ago. It was fairly recent that Haiti finished paying France for their freedom. I mean, like, the world that exists is so far beyond science fiction. It just blows your mind. And so, but despite the fact that they finished paying France for their freedom, we continue to coup them. We continue to, there's definitely seems to be U.S. connections to the assassination that took place recently, killing their president. But on top of that, their first ever democratically elected president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, was literally kidnapped by the United States, flown in a U.S. military plane to Africa and dumped in Africa while the U.S. inserted someone else to lead. That was their first ever democratically elected leader. So, this cycle just continues. And now the UN has approved it. The UN said, okay, go ahead and invade them again. That's fine. So I wanted to bring you that story for obvious reasons, even though I do have to pause every once in a while from the genocide watch that has become this show. Let's see. Let's go to Ukraine for a moment. I mean, let's not, because they're in the middle of a proxy war and they've filled their ranks with Nazis, which is also not something I want to hang around. So let's not go to Ukraine. But I brought you the other day the Time Magazine article where it's a Time Magazine writer that is written heavily positively about Zelensky. He wrote the article for Zelensky's Man of the Year. And yet, even within this kind of update article by Time, there's a lot in there saying that Zelensky's inner circle and the higher ups in Ukraine, all except Zelensky, know that it's over, know the proxy war is over, know that it's only going to end at a peace table, know that's the only step left, and yet continue to send, I was going to say young people to die in this insane war. But in fact, they've used up all the young people. I mean, how horrifying is that? They've used up the young people. Now the average age of a Ukrainian soldier is 43 or something, because they've basically sacrificed all their young to this proxy war. And none of this would have been happening if the US and UK had allowed the peace deal that was on the table a month after this war began. A month after it began, there was a peace deal there. And none of it would be happening if the US hadn't done everything they could to make sure this happened. But the reason I am bringing you an update is because not only is there the Time Magazine article, but now you have US propaganda outlet NBC News, one of my favorite propaganda outlets. But even they are admitting, I mean, this is for those of you who are fascinated by media literacy, understanding what to believe and where to get it from, for those of you who find that type of information important and necessary and something to continue to learn about, one of the things that is so important is when even the propaganda outlets begin to admit something that we know outside of the propaganda outlets we've known for months or years. As with the articles that began to come forward saying Russiagate was not all it was cracked up to be, and it turns out it was all a sham, and as they started to drip those out, when even the propaganda outlets, even the corporate news is admitting those things, the things we've known for years or months, that is a key moment, because that means that even they can no longer keep up the propaganda game. And here's a good example. This is from NBC News just the other day. U.S. European officials broached the topic of peace negotiations with Ukraine. The conversations have included very broad outlines of what Ukraine might need to give up to reach a deal with Russia. And this, of course, is going to be a worse deal for Ukraine than it would have been if they'd signed the deal a month in, back in 2022. So all Ukraine really achieved, which many of us were saying from day one, was killing a lot of their people, allowing a lot of their people to be killed. And that's not all the U.S. achieved. The U.S. wanted to allow a lot of Ukrainians to die in order to you put sanctions on Russia, et cetera. I've gone through all that before, but and cut off Russia economically from Europe, which that part succeeded. Obviously, also to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. That was a big goal of all of this. But for Ukraine, for the actual Ukrainian people, they're getting ready to sit down at a peace table, it seems, and they're going to get a worse deal than they would have had when this thing started back in 2022. And the only reason that peace deal wasn't signed was because Boris Johnson, acting as an emissary for the United States, ran to Ukraine and told them, you can't sign any peace deals, and in fact can't sit down at any more peace tables, or else we won't support you. We won't support the peace deal. We won't be your security blanket. And Ukraine then backed off. Now, of course, right now, Zelensky has other reasons as well that he probably wants to continue the war. One of them is he probably doesn't want to be Gaddafi'd. Or Saddam Hussein. The U.S. has an interesting habit of, once we're done with one of these leaders that we've propped up or created, we either kill them, allow them to be killed, allow them to be arrested, or allow them to be arrested and killed. That tends to be where they end up. So Zelensky has a good reason to want this to continue, but he also has another reason, which is, according to Seymour Hersh and others, he and his people have skimmed $400 million, and that's from months ago, so I assume more than that now, but have skimmed $400 million from the funds that the U.S. has been sending to Ukraine. So, these people, him and certain people around him, have been made insanely wealthy by this war. So there's that reason as well. But to see this coming from your mainstream media, NBC News, is a big deal. And as I've mentioned, many of us have been saying that this is how it's going to end, right? It's just, how many people do you want to kill before you do this? U.S. and European officials have begun quietly talking to the Ukrainian government about what possible peace negotiations with Russia might entail to end the war. The conversations have included very broad outlines of what Ukraine might need to give up to reach a deal, the officials said. Some of the talks, which officials described as delicate, took place last month during a meeting of representatives. The discussions are an acknowledgement of the dynamics militarily on the ground in Ukraine and politically in the U.S., Europe, officials said. And this is also NBC News and our corporate monstrosity of a media and our government essentially admitting that this big counteroffensive that our government and our media touted for months and months and months was nothing. This is their admission. Because if it had been the massive success they said it was going to be, then you wouldn't see an article like this right now. And you wouldn't see Zelensky's inner circle in Time magazine saying they were all completely out of options and completely fudged. Keep it clean for the children. Fudged. Man, are they fudged. They are fudged 8 ways to Sunday. Get it? Fudge Sunday? Wow. God, I'm funny. Oh, I can't believe it. I just came up with that one on the fly. On the fly. All right. So let's go back to Israel for a moment. Why not? Rather than give you just 24/7 Israel, I thought it was important to jump around a little on this one. By the way, I'm doing an extra segment for all my members at leecamp.net, which is my locals page. I'm going to do an extra segment after the hour is over. But also right now, this stream is just going to continue at rumble.com/leecamp as well as locals. So now it's free to watch on Rumble. So don't worry, there's no paywall. You can head over to rumble.com/leecamp to see the rest of this. I'm about to give a really gripping statement by Holocaust survivor Gabor Mate. If you know the name Aaron Mate, that's his father, but it's kind of unrelated. Anyway, I'm going to give some of his statement, because coming from a Holocaust survivor, coming from a former Zionist, coming from someone who is highly respected in the academic community, it is a very powerful statement. So I'm going to be going into that, and I have more news after that as well. So join me over at rumble.com/leecamp, completely free to join me over there, as well as my locals page. And for those of you thinking about, sorry, I got to change the streams over here real quick. For those of you thinking about becoming a member, it's $6 a month at locals, leecamp.net, and it helps keep the show going. And it equates to 38 cents an episode. And you get my ebook, my new